Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are starting a reading vlog. I'm going to be trying to read all 10 of the finalists of the Goodreads Choice Awards in the fantasy category. I previously have done this before for the YA fantasy. I'm not going to leave them linked down below because they're terrible. Last year I wasn't able to do it because I was in my final year of college, and this year I had no intention of doing it because of the fact in my head I was like, well, it's probably going to be this book, this book, this book, and I have no interest in reading them. And a lot of that was because I thought it was going to be a lot of fantasy romance. But then it turns out there's a separate fantasy romance category or romantasy category. Once I get an idea, I cannot let it go. And so I did not let it go. And so now I'm reading the finalists. I haven't really looked at them yet. I've only had a quick nosy, and like it's hard to avoid things because people are just talking about it. So I know Fragile Threads of Power is nominated, and I know Mark Lawrence is nominated. What's his book called? Book That Wouldn't Burn. And I think I saw that Amina Al-Sirafi is also nominated. So there's been a couple that I've seen. I am going to write down all 20 of the nominees, and I'm going to write down their average rating and how many ratings they have. And then I'm going to look for the top 10 that have the highest of both of them. So like that there's overlap. Usually there is about 6, I would say, that will be in the top 10 highest rating and the top 10 number of ratings, and those 6 you are basically guaranteed to be getting into the final. And then there'll usually be like other ones where like, oh, these have a higher rating but there's less reviews, and then oh, these ones have a lower average rating but there are more reviews. And usually I will lean towards picking the ones that have more reviews in general. So let's click into fantasy. So I see, okay, I've actually never heard of that one of the two of those. Venko Coven, I've never actually heard of that. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, okay, I did expect that. Witch King by Martha Was, I did not expect that. We know what I'm voting for. That is a 5-star from me. I know how to say it in my head, but I can't say it out loud. Clytemnestra? No, that was completely wrong. I'm so sorry. Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Oh, that's probably gonna get through and I'm gonna have to read it, aren't I? Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. I've read that. Victory City. Okay. The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrian Young. I did not know this was a book that existed. A Day of Fall Night by Samantha Shannon. This was another reason why I didn't want to do this video. I read Priory. I give it 2 stars. I'm pretty sure this is going to get to the final 10. Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. Again, more mythology. The Will of the Many by James Islington. The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I thought that was kind of more like horror-y, and also I didn't realize it was actually adult. Then we have Ink, Blood, Sister Scribe. I have Hellbent by Lee Bardugo. I have Starling House by Alexi Harrow. This one kind of works. I kind of hope that it gets through. Like, on the one hand, I've heard mixed things about it, but also I'm pretty sure this is the next Illumicrate book that I'm getting, so that works. The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. I read that. I gave it 4 stars. Then Bookshops Bonedust by Travis Baldrick. Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. I'll come back to you when I've actually like written out the numbers. Hello. Oh, so the finalists are out, I think. It would be so embarrassing if I go on and they're not there. Now the 10 that I think will get through. So let me get out, because when I originally wrote out my sheet, the ratings have changed quite a lot since then. Like the only one that's like the most dramatic change was Bookshops Bonedust, which went from 20th number of ratings to 16. And then Fragile Threads of Power also went from 16 to 14. So yeah, but even then those still might have actually changed even more since then. But the books that I think will get through, please, like these numbers are out of date, but this is how I figure out what to read. So there is 4 books, as you can see, from those top 20 that are in the top 10 of average rating and number of ratings. That means I'm like confident that all 4 of them are getting through. So the 4 that I am like, if these are not here, I'm going to be so shocked, are Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, A Day of Fall Night by Samantha Shannon, Hellbent by Lee Bardugo, and The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. So those 4 I'm so positive about. Like I really would be surprised if none of them are, if those aren't on it. There is technically a 5th one that is in the top 10 of average and number, and that is, I can say them, Clytemnestra, but that, because as I said, that is in the top 10 of both of them, but I'm not sure that will get through. Is there 3 or 4 Greek books? But I think that would probably divide the people who will vote for those. And Stoneblight has a lot more number of ratings, so I think Stoneblight will get through, but Clytemnestra won't. Then we're going to go with Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries. It is the third highest number of ratings, and it's 11th in average rating, so it's pretty close. So I'm pretty sure Emily Wilde is going to get through. I think Starling House, that's a pretty high number of ratings. I think maybe Fragile Threads of Power might get through just because of name recognition. Then I think also what I think might get through is The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence, because I feel like he is the author that I've seen trying to get people to vote for it. So I'll be curious to see if that works. Kind of a small part of me thinks Bookshops and Bonedust, because I think people will just vote for it anyway. But I'm not sure, but I haven't had enough time. So I'm gonna go with Bookshops and Bonedust. So let's actually see. Fantasy. Oh my god, has Swordcatcher made it? Oh my god. Okay, actually, I don't mind this list. Wait, did none of the Greek retellings make it? Two that I was wrong about. That's not too bad. So, Starling House, A Day of Fallen Night, Fragile Threads of Power, Bookshops and Bonedust, The Unmaking of June Farrow, Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, Encyclopaedia, Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Fairy, The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi, Hellbent, and Tress of the Emerald Sea. Before I start reading, I should probably predict what way I think it's gonna turn out for me. Okay, number 10 I think is gonna be A Day of Fallen Night, because I gave Priory 2 stars. 9th, Hellbent maybe? I think I gave the first book 3 stars. Then Bookshops and Bonedust, also probably gonna be a 3 stars, so I'll put that in 8th. I think 7 for that. Just give me 3-star vibes from those synopses. I'm gonna put Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I'm growing out of Cassandra Clare books, but I still have emotional attachment to the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Starling House, I'm a little worried about. This could be a 3 or 4 stars, and I'm gonna put it next. So I'm gonna put this in 5th. And this is just total instinct. I don't even know the synopsis of half of these books. 4th position, I'm going to push Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. As I said, my interest has gone up and down, up and down, up and down about this, but I'm kind of hoping that it's going to give me similar, a mix of Regency fairy tales by Olivia Atwater and The Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. I'm hoping it's going to be a combination of that. I could really love that. So that's what I'm hoping. And I'm going to put it in 4th, and I'm predicting a 4-star, just gut instinct. So I already know that Amina is below Threads of Power because I've read them. But where will I think Tress is going to fall within that? So 3, Adventures of Amina. 2, Tress of Emerald Sea. Number 1, Fragile Threads of Power. Which, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be a little upset if it's Fragile Threads of Power that wins it for me. I want to be surprised by something. Hi everyone. So I decided that before we actually start reading other books, I should probably tell you about the 3 books that I have read already that are on this list. So obviously one of them has actually not made the top 10, which is Witch King by Martha Wells, but I might as well just include it because I have read it and I do love it. So I think we'll start with the one that I actually read first, which is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. It follows a woman, and I think she's probably in about her 40s, and she is a mother. She used to be a pirate, but she stopped all that years ago to settle down and care for her daughter. She gets the offer of a lifetime, which would provide for her family for the rest of her life, and she would never have to worry or struggle or anything again. And it is all to go and find this girl who has run off away from her family. And so she sets off, and along the way she discovers some weird things at play and magical things that are happening. And I give this a 4 stars. I read this book as soon as it came out, which I believe was in February or March, I can't remember. So my collection of it is a little fuzzy, but I did overall really enjoy it. I liked the audiobook a lot. I do know that it didn't work for some people because of the narrative style, but for me the audiobook really worked. it is a story, and it is told in the way that Amina is sitting down with someone and telling the story as they are like writing it down. And so every so often there's little breaks where the two of them are talking. Those like little interjections didn't work for some people, but for me, I actually really enjoyed it. She has a very like easy to get into writing style. And then I really enjoy the characters. Again, I really enjoyed the balance between like motherhood and like adventure. I know, again, a lot of people don't like stories that revolve around motherhood, and I personally like the balance. She very clearly like is a mother and her child is her priority, but also there is like a part of her that just longs for adventure and the seas and all of this, and kind of also like the guilt that she has with that. And I think it made her such an interesting character. I did also enjoy some of the side characters. I don't think I enjoyed the side characters in this as much as I did in Daybed trilogy. How up there. The Daybed trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies, and with that I enjoyed like the entire cast, whereas with this one the only person I think really stood out was Amina for me. But it is going to be a series, and like I definitely think after the first book there was probably only like 2 or 3 characters in the Daybed world that I really liked, and the rest took some more books to grow on me. So that could definitely happen with this series as well, considering I did also give the first book in that series a 4-star too. So I'm really hopeful for the continuations. Then the next book that I read was The Witch King by Martha Wells. It's just Witch King. I always say The Witch King. It's just Witch King. And I gave this book 5 stars. I'm pretty sure this is going to be my favorite book that was nominated, and it didn't even make the top 10. When I say Martha Wells wrote this book for me, I mean she wrote this book for me. So like I read this book, and like in the vlog that I read it, I'll leave the vlog link down below. Like I spent so much of the time being like, oh, if you don't like this, you might like this book. If you don't like this, if you don't like this, if you don't like this. Like it's like I was trying to convince people not to read this book, because I was like, I know so many people like this is not going to work for them, but it absolutely worked for me. I absolutely adored it. So this book, it follows Kai, and he is a demon, and he wakes up in a tomb, and he basically can't remember how he got here, and he also doesn't know how long it's been. And then he tries to find his best friend, and she is also basically trapped in a tomb, and the two of them, you know, they free themselves and they start on this quest to figure out, number one, what has happened, and also his friend's wife is missing, and they set off to try and find her. It has 2 timelines. It has the past and it has the present. So, and the way that they like mirror each other is so lovely. And like just like, again, another book that I personally really love the found family aspect. I absolutely loved Kai. I loved all of the characters in here. Like I adore them. They like totally worked for me. It's definitely not your typical demon, because Kai, like, yes, has a lot of extreme powers but doesn't use them, is quite human, and has spent so much time around humans, has really come to love and care about some of them. So like he's not going to try and hurt them. I think that a lot of people like come in and get disappointed by is that like it's not this dark fantasy about this demon who's like gonna like try and destroy the world or anything. It's not. It's about a demon who actually cares about the betterment of humanity, has like a found family, and just wants to keep them safe. That's like what this story is, and it really worked for me. Like just every aspect worked for me. Yeah, there's not that much of a plot. As I said, it's a very much like a traveling journey kind of a story. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the 2 timelines. I enjoyed the world building. I enjoyed the characters. I loved everything. Everything in here worked for me. But as I said, I know that it has not worked for so many people. And it's The Fragile Threads of Power. Which edition would you like me to show you? Fragile Threads of Power is a spin-off, the first book in a spin-off series to A Dark Shade of Magic. And it takes 7 years. It takes place 7 years after the events of A Conjuring of Light. They are all in different places around the world. In White London, there is a new queen. In Red London, there is a group of people that are trying to overthrow the king. And we have Tress, who is a teenager, and she has an ability to see magical threads and to actually be able to touch them. And I gave this book a 4-star. And I'm going to leave the vlog where I read it down below, because the journey that I went on with this book, because you would swear I was like, I don't know, something tragic was really happening, because like I was acting like this was the end of the world, that I was like not absolutely adoring, like dying for this book. Like I give it 4 stars. I really like this book. I did have some issues with it, but a lot of it comes from our own like, you know, like our own love for the original series and like having like such unreasonable expectations going into this. So this is actually like I think my highest or second highest 4-star of the year. Like it's really high up there. Like it was close to the 5-star, and but it just didn't quite make it. I think a lot of my problems basically comes down to the fact that V.E. Schwab has always, literally always said that their books have slow starts, and I have never once believed V.E. Schwab about that, because I have always just been so immediately captivated by their books that I've never felt the slowness. So like I'm obviously, I have the whole collection here. So like A Dark Shade of Magic, I was so immediately, like the premise and the world and Kel and Lila, I was so immediately gripped by them that like I did not feel the slow start of it. And that goes for the sequels of that as well. And then like Vicious and Vengeful, again, I was so immediately gripped by these characters that I didn't care. And then in this, it took me a while to get my bearings around the fact, like, yes, these are the characters that I know and love, but they are slightly different, because of course they are. It's been 7 years. And so like, it was like, it just kind of took an adjustment period. And then like, there was these new characters and I was like, but you're not Kel and Lila. And like, so it just took me a while to kind of get into the story. And it's the first time that that's ever happened to me, which is why I think I was so panicked. But as I said, V.E. Schwab always says the books have a slow start, and that is true. But I did actually really enjoy the story once it really got going. I did really enjoy it. These are the 3 that I've already read. So I'm 50% of the way into Bookshops Bonedust. Bonedust is the prequel to Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and so this takes place, I actually am not sure exactly when, but it takes place a couple of years I think before Legends and Lattes, and we follow Viv, who is an orc and a mercenary, and they've been injured and she is now just in this town recovering. So I think I'm enjoying it less at the 50% mark than I was with Legends and Lattes. I wasn't the biggest fan of that anyway. I just didn't really connect with the characters, so I didn't really care, but I definitely did enjoy it overall more. I don't know any like defining features of her personality at all, and this is the second book that I'm reading with her as the main character. This book is actually longer than the first one as well, which is also really does not need to be. Like, I don't understand the point of this book either, because like at least in the first book, from the very start of it, you know what it's about. It's about setting up this coffee shop. There is people and they're like kind of seem to be a bit threatening. Whereas in this one, obviously Viv is injured, needs to recover, and then there's this bookshop that might be failing. So are they is she trying to help save this bookshop? Or but then there's also seems to be something to do with necromancy, and it just, I don't really know what the point of it is. Okay, so first book is out of the way, so I have finished, well, let's talk about it, not like it is and it isn't. So I finished Bookshops Bonedust by Travis Baldree, and I'm giving it a 2-star. I think 2 feels harsh because there was nothing wrong with this book. I didn't have any like glaring issues. It's just not my style of book, and I was just bored and I didn't like it. And that's the thing, is I didn't like it, and my rating system is about me. And so I didn't like it, and so like that means 2-star. But as I said, it does feel harsh because I do think that like it was by no means a bad book, and I think obviously it is very difficult to come off the success of like your debut novel and it being like so loved, and then having to write a prequel. It is potentially less cozy than the first book, so if that's like the only reason you liked the first book, then maybe this won't be for you. But I do think overall, like, yes, it added a bit more to Viv as a character. I still don't feel like I know her that well or care about her that much. There's too many side characters in this story. In the first book, there is only a handful, and we get introduced to them one by one, and I did, while I never felt attached or to any of them, and while I also don't think I like really got that much backstory, I did get a good enough understanding of those characters. Whereas in this one, there was a good few more, and I kept confusing names. None of them really stood out to me in any way. The 2 different plot lines, I just don't think he handled that the best. Obviously this is the second book, and this is, in the first book there is kind of only really the one plot. In this one there is kind of two, so there's like the bookshop and then there's necromancy stuff. And so the necromancy stuff is actually more of like a typical fantasy plotline, and I think he struggled to do the two of them at the same time. He kind of kept switching. Like we would spend like, let's say 20 pages with the bookshop plotline, and then we would switch about over to the necromancy one, and there would be no crossover mention really between them. Like obviously there was a small bit, but really not that much. And so I think that's definitely something that he can improve on in the future, is kind of like weaving multiple plot lines together a bit more seamlessly. But that's my only like major complaint. I did enjoy the writing. I think that is probably one of his strong suits, is like descriptions of food. Like this really was a love letter to books at some points, and you did really feel that. And so like that is definitely probably like my most positive. So this is gonna be a pretty quick update, but I am actually a bit over. I think I'm nearly 60% of the way through Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really liking it. It's going to be, I think, a high 4-star. When I said I'm hoping that it gives me Regency Fairy Tales by Olivia Atwater mixed with Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan, I was spot on. Spot on. I'm having such a good time. This is exactly what I wanted from it. This story, it follows Emily Wilde, and she is one of the most well-known researchers of fairies. She sets off on an expedition to study this region's fairies, and while she's there she doesn't get off on the best foot with the locals, and so her research isn't going very well. And then her annoying colleague Wendell shows up, and the two of them end up having to work together. It's a bit predictable and all of that, but I'm having a really good time. So I really do like the characters. Heather Fawcett's doing a pretty good idea of having Emily Wilde be like not like other girls, but like not having it be, you know, disrespectful or I'm so much better than them, which I think I can find a lot of the time in like these historical fiction books. I also think Marie Brennan did a pretty good job. I mean, it's definitely like, it's something that like the character herself has to think through in that series. But yeah, in this one I think she does a good job of it. Like she doesn't fit in with normal society, and she knows this, but doesn't like look down on anyone or anything like that, which I respect. And it does seem to be kind of like, it is historical and it is set in the real world kind of, which is where one of my complaints comes in. So it doesn't seem to be like historically accurate, like, you know, period typical misogyny and stuff like that. That doesn't seem to be a thing, which is good. Like there is still like some, like she's has to fight to get her position as a faculty member. Also, I do like Wendell. As a world, very charming and positive and all of that. I enjoy them. I like them together. They make me laugh. I like a lot of the references to fairies and folklore. There's a lot of references to Irish folktales, which I do appreciate, and I think she's doing a pretty good job of it. I like the writing style. It's very like academic, but like it's not overly so. It's like, it's formal but fun and like kind of lighthearted at times. My main complaint is kind of the world building, I guess, because why are you setting it in the past? But then you are making up a fictional country that is very clearly, I'm not sure the exact country that it is, it's very clearly some sort of like Nordic country, like with the spellings and the way that like the culture is. It's very clearly based on them, so I don't understand why she didn't just base it there. Like, why did you make up a fictional country but then use the exact same like landscape? It's so weird to me. Like, why? Just rename all of the countries. Like, don't have an Ireland, don't have an England, don't have a France or Russia. Just like give them all different names, or don't make up fictional countries. Don't do both. That's my only complaint though. Otherwise I'm having a great time. I finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries, and I also have a mini book haul. It's only 2 books, and I've actually already read both of these books. A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and this is the illustrated edition. Beautiful. This copy of the book is absolutely gorgeous, so I can't wait to just put this on my shelf. And the second book I hauled will also give you an idea of how much I liked Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries, because it's Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries. I don't really have too many more opinions to add from what I talked about. I am giving it a 4-star. It is a very high 4-star. I think it'll be below Fragile Threads of Power, above The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi, which I don't think I thought it would be. I was going to be like, oh, I don't think anything in this book is like extremely special, but no, I think there is something special about this, because in a lot of ways there is a lot of stuff that we see and talk about and, you know, rave about all the time. There's a lot of that in here, but I think the way she handled it and kind of wrote about it, just like, it did something different. Obviously the Fae, all of that has been a huge selling point in the past years, and I really appreciated the way she wrote about them. This is the kind of fairy story that I like. I think she did a really good job of portraying fairies, and I did think for a while, I was like, I don't think fairy stories are for me. Kind of this year, I'm like, no, if they're done a particular way, fairy stories are for me. And it's definitely like the way Heather Fawcett and Olivia Atwater write it. Don't kind of shy away from like dark fairy stuff, but also while still like making it very light and fun, and I really appreciated that. And I think another thing is, like, this book, it is very predictable, but it was predictable in a way that so brilliantly mirrors fairy tales and like all of those kind of stories. Like, you can see the common tropes and all of that, and then she does them, and I really enjoy that. And I think I really liked Emily as a character. It was like a love letter to folklore, but also like I think it was a really beautiful story about community, and I really liked that. And I just had a really good time with it. I really like this. This is definitely my kind of story, and I can't wait for the sequel to come out, but I will probably wait till it's out in paperback. A 4-star. And up next is The Unmaking of June Farrow. Okay, at first I read the synopsis and I was like, intriguing. And then I started the book. I'm literally only like 10 pages in. And I was like, this writing style seems familiar to me. I don't really like it. And then I realised I have actually read a book from Adrian Young before. It was one of her YA books, but it was Fable. And I hated that book with a burning passion. And considering the writing style, I already see similarities, which is basically, you write so much, but say so little. Wish me luck. I read The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrian Young, and I'm giving it 1 star. Let's start by saying, it's not fantasy. It's not a fantasy. Follow June. And every woman in her family has basically gone missing or gone mad, and her grandmother has just died, and she is realizing that maybe it's starting to happen to her. She then kind of starts to try and figure out what the mystery of her family and her mother and all of this is about. And then one day she walks through a mysterious door. And then a thing happens that I'm not sure whether or not it's a spoiler, so I'm going to err on the side of caution and say that it is a spoiler and not tell you. I'm going to have to put a spoiler section for this. I'm not going to talk about spoilers just yet. Right now we're keeping it spoiler free. I'll tell you when we're about to get into spoilers, because I'm mad about this book. I hated this book with a burning passion, hence by it being 1 star. I've only given 2 1-star books this year. My problem with both of the books that I've read from her is like nothing really happens. I just have issues with her writing style, but for me it's words and descriptions for the sake of words and descriptions and doesn't actually add anything to the story. It didn't build a feeling, it didn't build an atmosphere, it didn't create a vivid setting for me, it didn't really like draw me into this small town. I would put probably 3-4 genres ahead of fantasy while categorizing this. So I don't know what order I would put them in, but the 4 genres would be romance, mystery, general fiction, and even sci-fi I would put before fantasy. We'll talk about that romance, because I mean it was technically a romance, but was it? I mean, we don't actually see it happen, really. It's so strange to, I don't want to spoil things, but like, oh, I didn't like him portrayed as, oh, he's protective, but for me it was just, it came off really wrong and it made him very off-putting to me. It's technically a romance. I cannot say for a second that there was actually any chemistry, any connection between these characters. I cannot remember a single scene where I was like, oh, they're perfect for each other, or oh, so sweet. There's not a single scene in my head that I can think of in this book that makes me think that, which isn't great. My Goodreads review of this literally says, "You've heard of miscommunication, now introducing no communication, the book." When I tell you every single issue in this book could have been solved if people just spoke. And I'm not talking about romance, I'm talking about every single thing that has ever gone wrong in this family. The characters, I mean, they were boring. I also thought that about Adrienne Young's other book. I feel like they are just like blank slates. I think she expects you to do the heavy work of coming up with interesting characters, because she certainly doesn't write them. That was a bit mean. So one more thing before we get into spoiler territory. I don't think this is spoilers because it's very early on in the book. As I said, all of the women in her family have kind of had, I guess, mental health problems, or that's what she believes anyway. And then she starts looking into this mystery of her family and realizes it might be something else. And I got the biggest ick about the way everything was spoken about in the early chapters. There was a lot of like infantilizing it and like making it out that like, oh, because she might have some sort of mental health issue, that she is incapable of doing anything. So now we're about to get into spoiler territory. The time on the screen that you can skip to, and I'll have a bookmark down below. One of my first problems was a child-free woman who of course changes her mind because she meets the right guy. I had an issue with how Adrienne Young kind of portrayed or talked about mental illness or potential mental illness in the first bit of the book, but I really did have an issue once we kind of found out what was happening, because we find out that her whole family knew that this is not them going crazy, instead of telling her. Which again, this all leads back to the fact that there was no communication in the book. Instead of telling her this, mother let her go through years of taking care of her, of being afraid that this same thing would happen to her, and the grandmother never once thought like, letting her know the truth of what was happening, leaving her granddaughter in the dark about what was happening to her. And like, it's so clear that the character is like so scared about it, and like the fact that nobody would have told her until is just, it made me so mad. It made me so mad. And then that just continues throughout the entire story. When she goes back in time, like we see it there as well. None of them want to tell her anything that is going on, and it is so unbelievably annoying. It does not make a compelling story at all to just have every single thing be an obstacle of, oh, we just don't want to tell you. Like, that cannot be your only conflict in the book. That is so boring. And then the very last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is a major problem, and it is with the whole 1950s, because the thought of a woman going back to the 1950s and staying there because it is better for her or more suited to her is just such an absolutely privileged take, because most women did not have it that well in the 50s. Like, yes, she is a white straight woman who has the benefit of going back to a husband who treats her well. So many women did not have a husband who treated them well, or, you know, they were not white and rich and privileged and straight. And like, it is so infuriating the way it is not even talked about. And the author's note makes you think that she has spoken about it, but she has not even mentioned it for a second. And it really maddened me. Anyway, I absolutely hated everything about this book. So yes, I am, I think, about 56, if we're going to be specific, of the way through Hellbent by Leora Dugal, and I am pleasantly surprised. A little bit of backstory first. I have obviously read Ninth House, but I read it when it first came out, which I believe was 2019, and I gave it 3 stars, which I would like to also say that back then I was real nice with my ratings. So like, for me to give something a 3-star, usually I actually didn't really like it that much, but I just hated giving low ratings. So like, I was not going into this book with the highest of expectations. I will say I did watch a recap. It still took me a little while to get into it, but it did help. The fact that like I didn't love it at the time, plus it's been 4 years, I really had no intention of ever picking up this book, except for the fact that it came up on this. And you know what? I'm not mad that I ended up having to pick this up. Like, I don't think I'm going to love it. I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be a 3-star, but I do like it. Ninth house, it follows Alex Stern, and she has the ability to see ghosts. And because of this ability, she gets recruited by some people in a secret society from Yale. Her job is to help this one secret society basically keep all the others in line, because they all do kind of occult things. And because of this, she gets like a free scholarship to Yale, and then like murders kind of start happening in the first book. And then so this book is obviously dealing with a lot of the fallout of the first book. I would say I was a little nervous when I actually started reading this, because the thing that I remember liking about the first book, and honestly the reason why it did get the 3-star instead of probably the 2, was Darlington. I really enjoyed his character. And when I started reading this, and there's like not sections from his point of view, I was kind of like, oh no. But I am liking this. I think also what helps in my enjoyment is I do feel like this is more fantasy than the first book. Like the first book is very much like, it's like dark academia, bit of a mystery, and like obviously there is like all of these supernatural things happening, but it's really not what I would call the main focus of the story. I prefer the characters this time around. In the first book, I just didn't really care about Alex at all, because she felt very basic to me. She felt very much like nearly a caricature of, ooh, I'm a badass. And it just, it came on a little heavy-handed maybe. Whereas in this one, I really think Leigh Bardugo has like toned that down so that she's still like, is, you know, like edgy and all of that, but like not to a cringy level. So yeah, so overall, enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. So I definitely enjoyed this more than I thought I would, and it was like a pleasant surprise. I do think that this was more of a fantasy than the first book was. I mean, I know the first book was still like categorized as fantasy, but it definitely did have a lot more mystery horror kind of elements than this book did. And I just think overall everything in the story kind of just worked better for me. As I said, it was more fantasy, which is my genre of choice, and also I feel like the characters worked a lot better for me. I still think Darlington is my favorite character, but I think Alex felt a lot more real to me this time around. I do think that some of the side characters aren't very distinct to me, but again, even then I did still feel improvement and did start to enjoy them more. And overall, this plot definitely just worked better for me. It is very much like, it's a bit of an adventure story, but we're learning a lot more about the magic and lore of this world. So overall, 3 stars. This entire vlog is just Rebecca featuring weird angles, and this is another one. I have I'm currently reading, I was about to say The Priory of the Orange Tree. No, A Day of Fall and Night by Samantha Shannon, which is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. I'm probably about 2/3 of the way in nearly at this point, because I forgot to do a halfway update. Again, it's another sequel, prequel, whatever, of a book that I had no intention of continuing that series. I do think it's better than the first book, but I'm still not really loving it. And it's even longer. It absolutely does not need to be this long. It feels like an eternity. Like, seriously. It feels like it's never gonna end. This is a prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. I'm not actually sure the exact time, but there is like a couple of like pivotal historical figures that are mentioned in the first book are involved in this one, and again it does involve like dragons and stuff, so we follow a couple of different points of view as they deal with all of these like worm dragon like creatures awakening. And as I said, I do like it more than the first book, but considering I really did not like the first book, that's not much of an improvement. I still have a feeling it's going to be a 2-star because I don't really care. Like, I do think it's better, but I don't care about it. The thing is, it doesn't actually make the book objectively bad. It's just like the way it was marketed, and I don't even think I'm not sure Samantha Shannon ever even said this, but a lot of other people did, about how it was such a feminist book. It was like a matriarch and all of this. And when I read the first book, I was really excited about that, and then I was really let down by the fact that, like, to me it felt like every other fantasy world, the men still hold majority of the power, or at least most of the powerful positions in the world are held by men, and the queen is basically just seen as a human incubator. That is her only purpose, is to give birth to an heir, and that is not what I picture. I knew that going into this book, so I don't think it bothers me as much, but it still does. But as I said, I don't think Samantha Shem ever said anything about that. I'm pretty sure it was just the way people on BookTube and BookTok and all over the place marketed it. I will also say, like, the big improvement on this book is the time spent between the different places. So much smoother, so much more equal. I really feel like I know all of them, at least some bit, and I have a better understanding of the East and the West and the South. I feel like I have a better understanding, and I did not get that in the first book at all. That book, I barely understand why there was, I think was there 4 point of views? I don't remember if there were 3 or 4. Like, actively disliked a lot of things in the first book. Whereas in this one, I'm very meh about them. So I'm still feeling like 2-star, but like it's not like an actual like, it's more a dislike as in like I'm kind of indifferent and I don't care, as opposed to like I actively dislike things in this book. I'm pretty sure it's a book that I'm going to be reading real soon. It's shiny. Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Oh, it's clear. Oh, that is so cool. Oh damn. Let me use me as a backdrop. Like, it is gorgeous, but like this is a whole nother level. And it's just black on the top and bottom. Okay, so I finished A Day of Fall Night by Samantha Shannon, and I'm giving it 2 stars. This video, it's really ups and downs here, isn't it? I don't actually think I have anything to say about this book that I haven't already said. I mean, obviously I said some stuff in the last update, which is basically that, like, I just don't care about this world. I don't care about these characters. I don't care about anything. Like, honestly, all I can say is like, oh my god, it felt like I was reading this for an eternity. It's so long. Why did it have to be that long? At the end of the day, like, how do you write a book that long and still have me like not care at all about it? I was so bored. I felt like this was never going to end. And then when it finally did, I was just really like, that's it? It's over? So yeah, so I'm glad it's over. Not for me. Next up is going to be Starling House, which I have over there. I obviously have the lovely Illumicrate copy. So I guess we're gonna start that. I think I might have told you I was about to start this book, but I don't think I told you anything else about this book. I did haul it in this vlog, and that is Starling House by Farrow. So this is the Illumicrate edition, which I do think is absolutely stunning. And I was very nervous reading this because, like, oh my god, if I don't like it, I'm gonna have to get rid of it. But the good news is I did like this. Not a particularly high 4-star, but it did get a 4-star. And so it's safe on my shelves for a while. Like, eventually I might want to get rid of it, but for now, it gets to stay. So we follow Opal, and she lives in this very small town, and it's kind of like everyone knows everyone, and she has been looking after her brother since their mother died, and she has been working multiple jobs trying to keep them afloat and trying to kind of get a better life for her brother, because he is like so smart and so creative, and she wants better than this small town for him. And then one day while she's walking home from work, she walks past the Starling House, which is this kind of creepy old house that there's a lot of like rumors about the place. And she stops there, and she actually ends up talking to the owner of the house, and then she kind of keeps coming back, and eventually she gets a job, but things might be as they seem in Starling House. I was a little unsure going into this because I have actually read 2 books from Al-Sirafi. I read her 2 novellas. What are they called? They're inside here. Oh, Fractured Fables is the series. So a spindle splintered and a mirror mended. And I think after this I am actually a bit more interested in reading some of her other books. I've never been particularly drawn to them. I've heard very mixed things about both of them. It's kind of a thing where I'm like, it does things good but not great. Like, I liked the characters, I didn't love the characters. I liked the atmosphere, but it didn't quite get there as like one of the most atmospheric books. But like, I liked it, and I did have a good one. It's just not the best one, you know? Not much of a plot. Like, there's like, you know, weird house, weird things happening, but like really the plot is about, it's more an internal kind of a plot where it's revolving around her and her feelings around this town, and her kind of trying to discover about herself, but like she does it through the house kind of, and by discovering the history of this house, she starts to kind of discover stuff about herself. And so like, yeah, while there is stuff happening, like really the most important things is her and all of the things that are happening around her. And so it is a good thing that I liked the character, because otherwise we would have been in trouble. There was nothing about it I think that I really disliked. I do think that there was a couple of times where I just found it a bit frustrating, our character, because she is so unwilling to ask for help or tell anyone what is going on with her, and that is frustrating. It didn't frustrate me to the point that like other books would have, like for example like in The Unmaking of June Farrow, like the no communication in that book absolutely infuriated me. Kind of the reason for it in that book was because of the fact there wasn't really an explanation given for it, and like the ones that weren't satisfactory. Like why? I still don't understand why you wouldn't just tell. Whereas with this one, like you understand, you get a good enough understanding of this character and how responsible she feels for everything around her to kind of understand why she wants to keep this stuff to herself, because she doesn't want to have to rely on other people. She wants to be the one that people come to for help, not the other way around. So like you understand it, but that doesn't mean you don't want to shake her. So, but I overall really liked it. She also likes to kind of talk about like, you know, found family and all, but also like kind of responsibilities, what yours are, and like what are the ones that you're kind of making for yourself, and whether or not they're kind of real. And I think the discussions about that kind of stuff in here, like especially like the responsibilities you make for yourself whereas the responsibilities you actually have, I think I really enjoyed that discussion in here. And overall I did enjoy it. Like it's not going to be a new favorite. It's probably not going to be a book that like I actively remember, except for the fact that it's gorgeous. But I did enjoy it, and I'm giving it a 4-star. Okay, so I am 50% of the way into Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, and I'm really enjoying this. I will say I liked the start more than I do now. I think now I'm kind of getting to a point where it's feeling a little repetitive to me, because like at first I was like, oh my god, am I gonna get a 5-star book out of this vlog? I'd say around about a third of the way in, I started being like, I just want a bit of a change. But I am actually really enjoying this. So, Tress of the Emerald Sea. So this follows Tress, and she lives on this island, and nobody can ever leave this island except for like the nobility. And she has fallen for the Duke's son, and he then has to leave and get married. And a year later, his father returns with news that his son has basically been kidnapped, and Tress decides to set off on an adventure to save him. So I have mixed opinions on Brandon Sanderson, let's say. I've read Skyward, I've read the original Mistborn Era 1, Elantris, and Warbreaker, and I've given them all 4 stars. So I like his books. So I want to preface this with that. But it's been over a year since I've picked up one of his books, because of the fact there is nothing about his books that actually really appeal to me. He's such a big name, and that's why I picked up, because I was some of those other books, is because I was like really early in my fantasy journey and I didn't necessarily know exactly what I liked, and he's such a big name, I wanted to give them a go, and I did enjoy them. From the like 5, 6, if you're including Skyward, which is a YA sci-fi, so I'm not really talking about that. If we're talking about those 5 books, there is nothing about those books that made me think, oh my god, Brandon Sanderson is just exceptional. Everything in his books is pretty average to me. Like his writing, his characters, his worlds, his plots, everything is pretty standard to me. And that's not a bad thing. He does it all, and he does it well. Like, but as I said, I don't think there's anything about them, to me, at this point of my fantasy journey, that sticks out to me and goes, oh my god. Like, that really sets it apart. If you are a huge Brandon Sanderson fan, like, obviously, like, I get it. Because, as I said, he's solid in all that he does, and he's consistent, which I think is very impressive. I think early on, a lot of people talked about how unique his, like, magic systems and all of this were, and I realized there's a lot of authors that do really incredible magic systems. It's not just him. As I said, do I think he does a good job? Yeah. Recently, in my last vlog, I think that I posted, I had a bit of a conversation about being a character-driven reader and how sometimes in the fantasy space, that can make me feel like a lesser reader, like such a woman, you know, like being a character-driven reader. And even big Brandon Sanderson fans can admit that has not been his strongest point in the past. But this book, I think he does a really good job of it. There's so much personality in this story, and I think because like he originally wrote it for his wife, he didn't plan on publishing it. I think there's just something so different about it. Like, he got to test himself and to try something else that maybe the people who read his books mightn't have necessarily have loved. And I think it really shows, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Okay, so we've now reached the end, which you may be like, there's a book you haven't spoken about, which we're gonna get to. So obviously I still have to just wrap up Tress of the Emerald Sea for you, but I also have not mentioned Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare at all in this video. And that is because I'm not gonna read it, I'm sorry. My library hold has not come through yet. Everything else in this I have either owned, already read, or I was able to get it on SCRIBD or through my library. And one of them, I actually signed up for an Audible 30-day free trial so I could get a credit so I could listen to one of them. That's how dedicated I am. Swordcatcher was one of the books that I did put down that I wanted the audiobook for. And when I put it down, I think June of 2024 it was saying. And so I was like, uh-oh, this is not good. But I was like, people are gonna read it and return it, hopefully. And I was right. It is currently now saying that I'll get it in January. And so my library gives them out for about a month at a time. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be the next person to get it. So like, I bet as soon as I post this video, it's going to come through. And I'm going to be real annoyed by it. And so I did think of just buying it, but I went on to like my Apple Books. It is €11 for the ebook. I can't do that. I cannot rationalize paying that much for an ebook of a book that I'm not even that interested in reading. So I am really sorry that I'm not going to be reading it in this video, because obviously, you know, I don't want to just like give up, but I cannot rationalize it. And then that brings us to Brandon Sanderson. And so I did finish Tress of the Emerald Sea, and I'm giving it a 4-star. A really high 4-star. The way that I have filmed this, I have filmed it like just talking one book at a time, but there has been like times where I've been like listening to one thing as an audiobook while physically reading another, and that was the case for the Tress of the Emerald Sea. I was also reading Starling House at the same time. Obviously you didn't see it like that, but I am really glad that after the last time I spoke to you about Tress of the Emerald Sea, I put it down for a while. And I picked up Starling House because I no longer had any jobs to do, so I was going to just be sitting there and I was going to just have figure skating on in the background. So I put it to the side for a couple of hours and I finished it this morning. And I'm so glad that I did that, because it very much increased my enjoyment. I don't think that this is a book you want to read in one go, because I think the writing style, it did start to get repetitive and get on my nerves. And just putting it down for that while and then coming back to it with fresh ears this morning, I was enjoying it again. So I do think it is definitely a book that I would not recommend just like absolutely binging. That's just my personal opinion. It was kind of like feeling really repetitive to me, and I just like was starting to like not like it as much as I had when I started it, because I was really liking it. And then when I picked it up again this morning, I was like having such a good time again. And so I really like this book. It's a really high 4-star for me. And yeah, on the one hand, it makes me excited to try Brandon Sanderson again, but also I know his books aren't like this because I've read other of his books. And so I know this is like an exception in his books, but I had such a good time. I loved the characters. I loved the journey. Like, kind of the synopsis makes it sound like an epic quest for love. Like, that's not it. It is a quest for her finding herself. And yeah, she has this goal of, you know, rescuing the guy she loves, but along the way she finds so many new people. She finds so much of herself. She discovers things that she never would have dreamed of and becomes the kind of person that she never thought she would be. And I just absolutely loved it. I love the journey that we went on with her as a character, and I really liked the side characters. I will say there's one or two that just like kind of mixed together for me, but aside from that, really loved it. I know a lot of people say like Stormlight Archive is like the best of his best. and I have heard good things about the character in there. And like the books that I have read from him is a lot of his earlier stuff where I don't think the character work is that good. And just like comparing the character work in this to those books, such an immense improvement. And it does make me kind of excited to try some of his, like the Stormlight and all of that, because I have heard such good things about the characters. And so like I am grateful for that. And I love the quest. I love the quest element. I love the like travel and journey. I enjoyed that it kind of poked fun at nearly like the fact that like the plot armor that she had, like everything seemed to work out, and it poked fun at the fact that like this girl with no experience was able to do all this stuff. And I like that. And I like the fact that it poked fun at writing, and it poked fun at tropes, and just I think he had so much fun writing this in this and poking at so much things that he's done, things that everyone does, and I think he had so much fun with it, and I think you can tell. And I think it's something really refreshing from him. This is a book about loving stories. I'm gonna wait for the like proper like the small paperbacks to come out, but I do definitely want to own this. I really like this, and I really like the ending, how everything came together. Oh, I had such a good time with this. Maybe I did prefer it to Fragile Threads of Power. Am I gonna put this as my number one? I don't know. Oh no, I have to make a decision now. I'm wrapping up this vlog. No, I think it is. Okay. All right, no, I'm gonna put this as my number one. So I'm going to put up on the screen, I'm going to put my rankings, minus Swordcatcher, apologies Cassandra Clare, and then I will put the official winners. So I was not surprised when Hellbent, well, I was a little surprised. I knew that it was going to be a toss-up between Brandon Sanderson and Leigh Bardugo, but I did kind of think it was going to be Leigh Bardugo. I will say, I think it was one of the first years in a while where like the winner hasn't had like so many more votes than they have readers, because there's actually less. And I'm like, wow. I mean, yeah, that would mean like literally almost every single person who has read this book voted for it, which, do I believe that? I'm not sure. This year was lucky that there wasn't so many sequels in it. And like the ones that were sequels, I had actually already read the books. And I don't think I'm gonna be that lucky if I do it again next year. So basically I'm saying is, I'm gonna wait obviously until next year, and I'll see what are in the top 20 and if it excites me like it did this year. Like I was excited seeing the list this year, and so that's why I did this. But if it doesn't excite me, then I probably won't do it. But I'll definitely do videos about it next year. Whether I'll do this vlog again, that's another question. Also, note to future Rebecca, if you do it next year, edit as you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!